Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Writers Chat. We're so glad to have you with us this morning. We meet every Tuesday morning, practically. We are going to be taking a break for the holidays, but most Tuesday mornings you can find us here, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, and we're glad you're here, whether you're here in the chat with us right now or watching the replay. I'm Johnny Alexander. I'm here with my my co-host, Brandy Bro and Bethany Jett, and I'm going to turn it over to Bethany to introduce our special guest today.
Well, hey, everybody. It's so good to be back, and I'm really excited. I'm also a little congested, but I'm also very excited to introduce our guest. I've known Janyre for a couple of years, I believe. She's with Kregel, my publisher, and I'll read her bio because it's so wonderful, and I want you to get every little morsel of it. And then connecting on Twitter recently and at conferences. So it's been fun. So Janyre, I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And let me tell you a little bit about her. Janyre Tromp has worked in the CBA industry for almost 25 years, spending time in both marketing and editorial. Currently, she's a developmental and acquisitions editor for Kregel Publications by day. At night, she is a best-selling, congrats, historical novelist who loves spinning tales that, at their core, hunt for beauty, even when it isn't pretty. Her books, Shadows in the Mind's Eye, Oh Little Town, and It's a Wonderful Christmas, have been described as lyrical suspense and are available wherever books are sold. And all that happens from her unfinished basement, surrounded by her family, 2 crazy cats, and a slightly eccentric Shetland Sheepdog. And you can find her on all social media platforms at Janyre Tromp, written just like it is on the screen, and I'll say it for the recording, JANYRETROMP, and on her website, janyretromp.com, where you can download a free copy of her novella, Wide Open. Janyre, thank you for being here so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And just so you all know, this is not real. So I am working in my unfinished basement, but nobody needs to see the cat litter, which is about right here.
Okay, we need links to that.
Isn't that amazing? My husband got it for me for Christmas 2 years ago. And it has been so amazing because I can be in my office with my little light and everything and look professional, even when I'm in my unfinished basement.
I'm glad you told us that, because I was thinking she doesn't have enough books. She's got all those bare shelves. There needs to be more books.
No, my bookshelves do not look like this. My bookshelves look like, massive quantities of books stacked and shoved.
In there.
And then I have bookshelves everywhere too. So, yes.
Funny.
So today we get to talk about platform, the dreaded platform. And I will tell you guys. So in my bio, Bethany mentioned that I have spent some time in both editorial and marketing. I'm going to throw this up so that we know what we're talking about, y'all. And I have a second screen, so if I'm looking over here, I'm not ignoring y'all. It's because I'm making sure that I haven't accidentally advanced my slide when I shouldn't have, because let me tell you, it's happened. So we're talking about this platform, and platform is something that publishers are looking for, but it's something that's so misunderstood and feels so scary to authors, especially for those of us who write stories rather than nonfiction, which I will fight anybody that says nonfiction shouldn't have stories, but that's for another day. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. As Bethany said, you can find me online pretty much everywhere. I kind of make it one of my life missions to help other authors with whatever they're dealing with at a particular time, if I can, because I don't know everything. That said, if you have an idea, thought, something that you're like, ooh, I know something about this topic and I have this suggestion, please drop it in the chat. I will kind of try and keep an eye on the chat as well, so that I'm kind of aware of what's going on inside the chat box. So if you have a question or a suggestion, pop it in there, and I've got it right below so I can kind of keep track of stuff. We'll see how that goes. So first of all, when we're talking about platform, it's really important that we're all talking about the same thing. Haha. So let's talk about platform, because I think a lot of authors get all tangled up in knots when they don't need to. Okay. So we're all writers here. We're all communicators, and our eventual future goal is that we're going to talk to people, right? We want to be able to communicate people with others. We want to be able to have a conversation with our readers. That is what a platform is. A platform is where you are talking to your readers already. That's all a platform is. It could be in speaking. I do a lot of speaking in writers' conferences. As we all know, writers are readers. And so I find a lot of my readers at writers' conferences. Maybe you speak at MOPS and you are a writer of books for millennials. It's a great place for you to go. It could be newsletters. It could be social media. It could be libraries. Wherever readers are hanging out that are your readers, that is your platform. It's a lot easier and a lot less scary when you think about it in those terms. A lot of people will talk about platform in terms of only being social media, and that's just not the case. And we'll get into a little bit of that in just a second. So first steps in building your platform as a novelist, you got to find your audience, right? If we don't know who our audience is and where they are, how do you build a platform? Am I right? Okay, so the first step in finding your audience is to define who they are. I would very much encourage you to use psychographics rather than demographics. Okay, those are really big marketing terms that I'm going to pull apart for you here a second. Okay, so a psychographic is kind of where a person is psychologically. See that? Psychographic. It's where they are psychologically. So it's their felt needs. It's what they're feeling in life and what they want. So it might be that, and one person can be multiple psychographics. So I am a very eclectic reader. So at any given time, I might feel like, gosh, I really need a light read that I can just sit down and breeze through and at the end. Okay. So then I might be looking for a rom-com like Angela Strong's Husband Auditions. But I also am somebody who reads really thick, classic styling books or books that have really deep character, involved in all of it. And then I might go to a different style of book. I love mysteries, all of those things. So do you see what I'm saying? That your audience is more of what they're looking for in a book rather than how old they are and where they live. So I also, and that's a demographic. So a demographic is women age 25 to 35 who have 2 kids at home and work a full-time job. That's a demographic. That doesn't talk about what they need at the moment. Okay. So you need to think about your audience in terms of psychographics. What are they looking for? So for example, my books, Shadows in the Mind's Eye, is kind of a psychological thriller a little bit. But my psychographic inside of that is people who are looking for books that challenge them and talk about difficult issues in life in a way that still gives them hope at the end. And that's where my tag is I find beauty even when it isn't pretty. Okay. So those are the types of books I'm looking for. Somebody popped in and just said, would you like to see psychographics in a proposal along with the demographics? Yes. And I think most editors would like to see that. And it just makes anything you can do in a proposal that helps the editor realize that you know your audience. That's all super awesome good. And knowing their psychographics, what they're looking for, is super helpful. So now if you sit down and you figure out who your audience is, what they're looking for, then go find other authors that write similar things. Okay. So for me, Jocelyn Green is a comparative. Sarah Sendin is a comparative. Susie Finkbeiner is a comparative for me. Melanie Dobson. And so see, I know all of these author names that are in the Christian market that I write similarly to. I actually have a list of general market authors that I write similarly to as well, as far as who we're looking to target. So then what you do is you go out and you figure out where those people are and where they're talking to their audience. What are they saying in their audience? Little sneak tip, go in and see who is really communicating with these authors, who's really interacting with them, and start interacting with those people too. Because soon they'll be like, oh, we're friends, right? So if there's somebody in Jocelyn Green's network that is really communicative with Jocelyn Green, I start popping in and talking to that person too. And like, oh my gosh, Jocelyn is amazing, because she is. I'm being honest. I'm not doing something that I wouldn't do otherwise. I'm actually helping and supporting another author, which is amazing. This industry is really good at that. And yet I'm also establishing relationships with readers who will like my books too. And that's not why I do it. I do it to support Jocelyn, but it has this added benefit of also helping me. And then there are Facebook groups that have conversations about particular kinds of books. There's an inspirational Regency book, Facebook group. There's a split time group. There's all kinds of groups out there. So get involved in those groups, communicate, help other people, and you'll start slowly building this community, which is what a platform is. Okay. And I just touched on this just a little bit, but make connections with other book reviewers, other authors, and influencers. So I happen to be very friendly with my local bookstore managers because they carry and support authors. They carry books and support us as authors. So I have gone in and purposefully made friends with them, found out how to support them. Every time I do some kind of promotion, I try to work directly with them rather than bigger box stores and online places. Book reviewers are going to be your best friends eventually. Guys, take time to start to get to know them now, interact with them, support them. I've done whole series on Instagram about book reviewers, bookstagrammers that you should be following. And that helps support them. And that's what platform is. It's building these connections and these friendships. And if you start doing it now, pre-pub, that just sets you up even more to have a successful launch of your own books. All right. So now that we've kind of found where they're hanging out a little bit, now, how in the world do you go about talking to these people? So you have this general idea of what's going on. There's a lot of places that you can go. And here's a list of them. There's your newsletter. And again, we're going to dig into this, so don't panic too much. Scribbling notes. There's newsletters, there's BookBub, there's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Goodreads. And here is where knowing your audience falls into really, really helping you. My audience is probably not on TikTok. I'm on TikTok because I play with it. And I might be surprised, but they are not probably at this point my typical audience. And that's okay. There's actually been a lot of studies done. If you go to know anything about BookTok, there was a whole explosion not that long ago about how BookTok made authors bestsellers. Well, it wasn't the authors themselves making themselves bestsellers on TikTok. Did that make sense? So it wasn't an author on TikTok that was talking about their book that made their book a bestseller. It was a BookToker that made these other people's books bestsellers. And so there's some debate in the industry about whether TikTok is actually a place for authors to be. If you are in that younger audience, if that's who your audience is, then maybe be on TikTok. But that's where getting to know where your audience is to help pick and choose where you should be. Somebody said, is there something going on with our government wanting to make TikTok illegal? I have not heard of that. I'm not aware of anything on that particularly. There may be some copyright issues that are going on. Oh, somebody says for government employees on government devices. That makes sense. Yeah, don't use your company, don't use your company equipment for anything other than your company work. I try to make sure I don't do that either. I have a separate laptop for work and my personal writing. So that said, we're going to talk a little bit about each of these areas and where they're important, and then how you can use them a little bit. So we're going to start with newsletters, because newsletters are one of the few platforms that you own. Okay. So newsletters are one of the few platforms that you yourself own. Why is that important? I have almost 8,000 followers on Twitter right now. If anybody is following Twitter, there's something weird going on over at Twitter right now. And it's kind of doing this little weird imploding thing. And I may very well lose my 8,000 followers on Twitter as a regular source of me being able to talk to my audience. There's always algorithms changing going on. Instagram is, thank you, Bethany, for hanging out with me on Twitter. I love Twitter. Instagram is forever changing their formats. And it just, you're always kind of not sure if you're going to lose those platforms, but your newsletter is something that belongs to you. And people can't take that away from you. So definitely start a newsletter. We're going to talk about how to grow that, what to put in it. So don't panic there. But yes, newsletters are probably, newsletters and your own website are probably your top things that you have to get started. BookBub and Goodreads, are two of the things on this list. You can see them here. There's BookBub and there's Goodreads. BookBub is this fantastic website that emails your followers anytime your ebooks go on sale, which is amazing for them to do your advertising for you. But they also have the people who subscribe to their newsletters, you fill out a form saying what genres you're interested in, and then they send out, anytime one of those ebooks goes on sale, they send out an alert letting you know that these particular books in these particular areas are on sale. You can also, eventually when you start releasing books, you can apply for different types of advertising through them. They have these blasts that they send out to thousands and thousands of people that, you guys, if you can get them, they're hard to get, but if you can get them, you will gain readers. They're like magic, but they're really hard to get. But part of doing that is starting to build that community there on BookBub. And starting to gain followers there. And we'll talk again in just a second. We'll talk about how to do that, because a lot of the strategies across these platforms are really similar. Instagram happens to be my happy place. I am a photographer, kinda. I actually have kids' books that they're all animal pictures that I have taken. And that is something that, so I just love photos and pretty pictures. And so Instagram is kind of my happy place that's become kind of a place for me to talk to my readers. We talked about TikTok a little bit already. Facebook is still the king of social media. It's become a little bit less for younger audiences, but if our audience is millennials and up, Facebook is still the place to be. Again, algorithms will kill you every single time. It is the bane of my existence to keep up with algorithms. And I actually forgot to put on here, I'm going to look down at my phone a minute because I am going to give you the name of a gal to follow on, I'm going to put it in the, I'm going to put it in the chat box. Her name is Megan Erickson, and she has, I'm going to spell her name right. It'll be awesome. Megan Erickson has a newsletter that she sends out once a week that kind of encapsulates the changes over the last week. Super short, super to the point. She's what I use to keep up with all the algorithm changes because, oh my goodness, it's hard to keep up with. And so I need somebody to do that for me and just give me the stuff that's pertinent. Like, what do I need to worry about, Megan? Tell me this week. And that's kind of how I keep up on trends of what's going on. And she's really good with keeping up with Instagram and Facebook are kind of the two that she mostly pays attention to. And she'll talk a little bit about Twitter in there too. The final one on this list is Goodreads. And again, you guys, we only have a limited amount of time here, so I can't like dig into how to get effective on every single one of these. There are I'm sorry. Megan is on Instagram. And she has a newsletter, and somebody just put her web address down there so you can subscribe to her newsletter. Sorry, I didn't get it on the slide. I meant to, and I forgot. So Goodreads, if you aren't on Goodreads and you're an author, you are missing out. It's such a fun place. If you're a reader at all. I have been on Goodreads for forever, and I love Goodreads as a reader. So I track what I'm reading. I track what I want to read. And then I interact with my friends there. So I'm in a book club, like a physical book club. We've been hanging out, for a decade now, which is insane for me to think about. And that's partly how we choose books. So we each pick a book every month. Like if you're hosting, you pick the book for the month. And so we use that Goodreads to kind of tell who is read what and who hasn't. And so Goodreads is just a fun place for readers. It's specifically created for readers. However, there are ways for authors to take advantage of that, especially if you're published. You can buy ads, you can do giveaways on Goodreads, but again, interacting with readers, finding any place that you can interact with readers and make friends with them is ideal. This is what your goal is to go talk to readers and find places to communicate with them. And Goodreads is created for readers, so you need to be there. There are tricks if you are published of how to get your book moving on Goodreads. There are entire week-long seminars on how to do that with Goodreads. If you're really interested in it and you like Goodreads, then go look those up and kind of take those courses to really dig into it. This is basically just an idea of how to, where to start. And now that you're all totally overwhelmed with all of the places that you could possibly do things, let me tell you this. Find one or two social media places that you love and do those. And that's all you have to do. And you don't even have to do those. There are best-selling authors that don't have social media accounts. Okay. So all of the agents and editors out there just cringed at me and like went screaming the other way. How dare you? But it's true. There are best-selling authors. Bethany's cringing. There are best-selling authors out there that don't have social media. However, they have other avenues. And so if you don't have other avenues, social media is still a good place for you to meet your ideal readers. Okay. So don't abandon it altogether, because social media is a way for you to be open to communication with your readers. Okay. And I will say for me, my social media was integral in getting A Little Town on a bestseller list. I mentioned Twitter before. I don't have Twitter on this particular slide because I have found that it's mostly other writers in the writing community on Twitter. And so they aren't necessarily everybody's target market. But here's the thing. I have huge names as endorsers on my novels, huge names. And I met most of them on Twitter. And we communicate outside of that now too. But Twitter is a really, really good place for business networking. So I would suggest if you have any interest on Twitter, Twitter is a hard place to kind of figure out at first, but it's kind of like a brain dump. Honestly, about anything that's going on in your writing world. It's kind of stream of conscious, and it's just kind of a fun place to be. And if you want to hang out with me there, I actually give a lot of writing tips on Twitter. So things that I run into, if anybody out there is one of my authors, if I've just told you something and it pops up on Twitter, I'm not talking about you. I schedule Twitter a month out. Or more. So it's just things that I see, patterns that I see popping up, and then I put it up on Twitter. One of the nice things about Twitter is the Wild West environment. I agree with Patricia. But here's the thing. Twitter is amazing because you can block terms. So if we're in an election and you're tired of hearing about election stuff, block the two main people who are running for the election and you won't see their names. It's fantastic. So there. Okay. So those are the basic places where you can find readers. Okay. Yeah. You can mute words. You can mute individual people. If anybody doesn't know how to mute, you know what? Google is your best friend. Ask the Google, how do I mute terms on Twitter? And that's the best way to figure stuff out with social media, bar none. I do a lot of Googling. So now that we kind of have, okay, where do we find people? You need to figure out what to say, right? And that is probably the thing I hear the most. What do I say to these people? Okay, here's the deal. As novelists, we are our brand. Does that feel weird to you like it does to me? Like, I'm not a brand, I'm a person. Exactly. Be yourself. Like, don't worry about it too much. It is something that you can do that is just your daily life. So this right here is a screenshot from part of my Instagram feed. I encourage people to pick 3 things that they love. And then talk about those things on social media. So just from this screenshot, you can see this one right here is nature. Like I mentioned, I am a photographer, so you'll see a lot of nature pics on my feed for Instagram. I love books. So here you go. Here's book stuff. Carmen Chaubert, if you haven't read her, this book is so good. It's a contemporary book. It's really good. I'm running a couple of giveaways for Christmas time. So you see that here. I do bookish Would You Rather and bookish this and that all of the time. And my readers love that. And we chat about horrific things that might happen and forcing you to choose between them. And then I have my family, AKA my cats and my dog. So this was a reel that I did where Brave is very obviously the king of the castle. Just kind of a funny thing. And then I do a lot of quotes on my pages as well. I schedule all the quotes and the bookish this and that. And actually, this was a reel, so you can't schedule reels yet in Instagram, but I had it all set to go. So you'll see every other day, I have something already scheduled. I schedule these out in the Meta Business page. I schedule them out. I do it a month ahead of time. So I do all of my basic tweets, all of my kind of quote type things to go almost every other day in Instagram and Facebook. And then all I have to do is every other day fill in a little bit of information, a little bit of stuff from my daily life. And it's not as much pressure. Somebody said we also need to post topics about our book. Doing that before your book is out helps build an audience beforehand. Yes and no. So be careful about how early you start talking about what's in your book specifically. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, don't give somebody else your idea. Two, if you start too early, there's nowhere to pre-order. So I'm in the edits on a book right now. I'm not talking about it yet because it's not up on pre-order. So I'm not going to start diluting the cool marketing factors of what's going on in that book until people can order it. And so that's kind of something you want to watch out for. But if it's a general platform type thing that you're talking about, it's a general thing that is who you are. So, again, my tagline is celebrating beauty, even when it isn't pretty. And so you'll see that in the quotes that I pick. You'll see that in the nature pictures. I will often, this post actually talks about, this is the last rose of the season, and how death brings about beauty on the other side. Because this particular rose bush gives me beautiful red rose hips that hang out all winter long. So you see how what I talk about in my books, it does come out in my posts, but I'm not specifically talking about my books until you can buy them, if that makes sense. Okay. So you'll see here, this is actually a quote from O Little Town. And this is from my main female character. Her name is Eleanor and everybody calls her Lenny. And so that's a quote from her perspective. That's very much her personality showing right there. And so that's kind of what you kind of figure out what to talk about. And hopefully the things that are in your book are things that interest you. Does that make sense? I mean, if you're writing about things that don't interest you, that's a sad thing. Go find something else to write about. You want it to be something that's interesting to you. So every once in a while, you will see historical little factoids popping up. And typically the books that I talk about on my feed are historical because that's what I read the most of. Pretty Little Pieces is actually contemporary. But it's just the way she wrote it is not a typical contemporary romance. She did a great job with it. Okay, so here's the other thing. So you're writing about these daily things that happen in your life. I would encourage you, cell phones these days, they're amazing. The cameras on them are way better than anything that they've had in a very long time. I actually have a DSLR for anybody that knows what that is. I have a big camera for those of you that don't know what that is. And I very rarely take pictures with my big camera. I mostly use my iPhone. And in fact, this picture is from my iPhone. And I get gorgeous pics. So you know what? Once a week, take a bunch of pictures, or once a week, write down what happened to you that week and use those as the basis for posts. Know that Facebook very much prioritizes photos and videos. Instagram is prioritizing reels right now. They aren't difficult to use. It just takes a little bit of practice. The phenomenal thing about Facebook and Instagram is if you make a mistake, you can delete them. You can edit them. They're pretty flexible platforms. And if your platform is small now, thank the Lord for small platforms, because that is when you get to learn and make mistakes and not make it in front of thousands of people. If I make a mistake, I have a lot of people looking at it going, that was weird. Right? So it's a lot less impactful as you're learning to have a smaller platform, and that's okay. You have to start somewhere, right? So not the most recent newsletter that I sent out, but the one before that, somehow I sent out an old version. And yeah, it looked like Latin went out in one of my sections. And so I had to write so did anybody wonder when I suddenly learned Latin? Because sorry about that. And my newsletter is 4,500 people. So I sent out a bizarreness to 4,500 people. I had to eat crow. It was fantastic. So yeah, whoops. And here's the thing too. So since everybody starts somewhere, here's what another thing that I encourage you to do. As novelists, it's really hard to engage people in our novel writing without giving them some of our stories. So I very much encourage everybody that is starting out, that is pre-publication, to actually write a newsletter magnet. What the heck is a newsletter magnet? Bethany mentioned at the very beginning that if you go to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter and receive a free copy of Wide Open. It's a novella. That is a newsletter magnet. It's a way to say to people, hey, I know you don't know me. You don't know what my writing style is like. You don't know anything about me. So here's this little piece of writing that you may have for free to kind of taste test and see if you like what I do. That is a powerful way to gain readers. So if you haven't done this before, write a short story, write a novella. Do not give away a full novel. You can sell it later. Rework it if it doesn't work right now. Don't give away big chunks of writing. Do 20,000 words or less, 30,000 words or less. So novella length or smaller. And then what do you do with that, right? So that as we talked about before, your newsletter is your most important piece of your platform, and newsletter magnets are the most powerful way to attract people to that newsletter. So these are some tools you can use in building your newsletter. And I threw some in here that are kind of crossovers for just Instagram and everything in general. So Book Funnel is something that I highly recommend. This is a distribution method for your newsletter magnets. For those of you that are indies, this is also a way to make connections with other indie authors who are selling their books, okay? So it becomes a promotional piece. So you post your newsletter magnet into Book Funnel. And then if you buy the little bit higher price, you can get into promotions that a bunch of authors come together for. So this is how I started my newsletter. I went from 20 people to 1,000 people, almost 1,500 people in about a year, just doing this. And so what I did was I put Wide Open into Book Funnel, and then I joined promotions that other authors were putting together. And I, selected particular promotions. And what you do is you put your newsletter magnet into that promotion. And then all of the authors that are in that promotion promote the promotion. So if you have 20 authors in this newsletter promo, you have 20 people advertising your book. 20 other authors advertising your book on their newsletter, and you are doing it for them. And their people sign up for your newsletter in exchange for getting your free newsletter magnet. And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And so the 100 people that clicked from me advertising on social media and everything else were introduced to all of these other people. But then I was introduced to 20 other authors, people. And then you slowly gather that audience and start talking to them about the 3 things that you enjoy talking about that we learned on the last slide, right? And you start building this community on your newsletter. Somebody said, when you do it again and again, it's with the same magnet. Yep. You use the same magnet. So I've had the same newsletter magnet for 2 years now, 2 or 3 years. And I actively promoted it for about 18 months, until I had a book that I could start promoting. And I indie published a book last Christmas called, It's a Wonderful Christmas, with some author friends of mine. And then I started promoting that, in the place of Wide Open. Wide Open is still available. But I started using giveaways for It's a Wonderful Christmas to build my newsletter, instead. And then Wide Open became this nice perk for my newsletter subscribers because they've already been entered to win a book. And then look, you get this free book too. So that's kind of how I used BookFunnel as my very basic beginning. Depending on what newsletter distribution you use, BookFunnel can actually communicate directly with your newsletter distribution software and like push all of the new subscribers into it. I happen to use Flowdesk now, and there's not a communication with them, but it's super easy. BookFunnel emails me and says, hey, you have 2 new subscribers. And I download the file and then I upload it into Flowdesk. It's pretty easy. And again, I figured it all out by using the Google. I did how do I move, subscribers from BookFunnel to Flowdesk? And like, it told me step by step how to do it. Another phenomenal tool that I use is Canva, and Canva is an online photo manipulator, basically. Bethany, you use something else. Pop in and tell me what you use, because I can't remember.
I use, I love Canva, but we love and partner with Bookbrush too.
And I just know how to use Bookbrush. So yeah. So Bookbrush is another really good option, but I popped back on the slide. So you see this right here, it's actually a template that Canva has, and I just changed the colors to fit the cover of Oh Little Town. And then I use this basic template for almost all of my quotes for a period of time. And then I switch it, but my colors stay very, very similar. It's part of branding. It's color branding, and Canva is amazing at putting together branding. If you do Canva Pro, it's one of the few. BookFunnel and Canva are one of the few tools that I pay for, and I just write them off. And yeah, there's all kinds of really amazing Canva tutorials out there. It's a super, super powerful entity. It can make any reel that you see. If you go on my Instagram page, I think yesterday it was that I posted a giveaway. That reel, the video that's there, I built in Canva in about an hour. And that included me digging for the other author's book images. So it comes together really fast once you get used to it. Another resource you can use is Rafflecopter. Rafflecopter is, again, that giveaway that I posted yesterday. If you go into the link that I used to power the giveaway, it's Rafflecopter. It's free. You go to rafflecopter.com and it says, hey, how you doing? You want to set up a giveaway, and you do it all inside of Rafflecopter. If anybody wants Flowdesk, you can get a discount. I can get you a discount like 50% off, and I can send that to Bethany for her to send out to you guys. I just don't have it right now. So I will email it to Bethany once we're done here. I just ran out of time. I was on a deadline, so I apologize for that. So that's Rafflecopter. Rafflecopter is amazing. You can download files right out of Rafflecopter. If you're familiar at all with comma separated files, comma delimited files out of Excel, that's what comes down, and your comma delimited files can be uploaded into whatever email system you use. It makes it really easy. It selects the winner for you. No more counting through 100 names to find the random number that the random number selector selected for you. It's kind of fantastic. Then another tool that you guys have, your agency siblings are amazing. I actually communicate a lot with my agency siblings, and we put together a lot of things together, and we work together to promote one another. And I highly suspect Bethany would be willing to put this together for you guys. If you guys want to do giveaways together, if you guys want to do newsletter magnet giveaways and set up a promotion, kind of like what BookFunnel does, it's kind of amazing. Yeah, my agent is amazing on Twitter. It's Rachel McMillan. And Rachel and I are both people who believe in giving into the industry. And so you guys ask us questions. In fact, I run a group on Facebook that's just called Editing Insiders. I don't answer marketing questions there, but I do have somebody there who does. Just because I'm not a marketer by trade anymore. So it makes me nervous a little bit to answer as an official person on that. But Editing Insiders is just a Facebook group. And we answer any editing questions that you guys have as just a way to give back to the industry. We can't do specifics, so I can't say I can't answer the question, if I sent this pitch to you, would you like it? I obviously can't answer that, but you can ask, what makes a good pitch, and I will tell you that. Let's see, there's all kinds of things. Yeah, you can do just about anything on Rafflecopter, seriously. You can. It's very, very flexible. It's free. Does Rafflecopter work with giving away newsletter magnets? Yeah, it sure can. You just have to come up with the group of authors to promote it together. And that's where I was saying Bethany might be able to put together a group for you guys to come together and give away your newsletter magnets and have each other promote one another. The nice thing with BookFunnel is that there is already an author coordinating all of that. Like, you volunteer, you say, I want to do this kind of giveaway, and they coordinate it. They make all the graphics, and BookFunnel runs all of the backside of it. And that's why I started with BookFunnel. But if you already have the connections with other authors and want to put together your own promotions, go for it. The nice thing about BookFunnel too is that it automatically distributes your newsletter magnet, so that you're not having to, get that email, send an email back, attach the file. Like, there's just a lot more involved in doing it that way. But you can do it however you want, depending on how much money you want to put into it or don't want to put into it, and how much time you have. A lot of promotion comes down to time or money. And you just kind of have to decide which one you have more of at any given time. Writers' conferences are another great place to meet other authors and start coordinating. So I mentioned Carmen just a minute ago. So I met Carmen at ACFW. We had never met. We had never talked. I think we sat at the same table. We had no idea who the other one was. And then we were both like, oh, I know you, just from social media and having crossed paths. And she sent me her book, and I'm out there helping her promote it because I think it's amazing. So writers' conferences are great ways to make connections. And again, a platform is all about making connections, and however those connections happen, those are good things. And then, so Flowdesk, MailChimp, and MailerLite, those are some of the big, email distributions that are out there. MailChimp is free up to a certain point, a certain number. I don't remember. It's 2,000 or 2,500. And then they charge you a lot of money. Flowdesk and MailerLite, I don't think they have a free section, but after you hit that 2,500, they become a lot less expensive. And that's why I use Flowdesk because it's less expensive. To some extent, it is just, 2,000 followers for MailChimp and 1,000 for MailerLite. So there you go. And so I used MailChimp up until that 2000 mark. And that's when I switched over to Flowdesk. And it was a really easy switch, y'all. It was not that difficult. So if you have under 2000 and you're looking for something for free, it's a good way to start. There's nothing wrong with it. I will say that I'm pretty technically savvy. I'm not like, I'm not going to go work for Best Buy and be their Geek Squad or anything, but I can kind of navigate my way through things pretty well. So again, it's time or money. Time or money. So I've taught myself how to do a lot of stuff because I didn't have the money at the time to do it. But now that I'm making a little bit of money on the writing side of things, I can afford to write things off. So right now I'm shifting a little bit more over into paying people to do things for me because I don't have the time, because I released 3 books in a year and that takes a lot of time. But that in a nutshell, y'all, like that was get out the fire hose and shoot you with it. But that is in a nutshell what goes into promoting and starting a platform when you're a fiction writer. It's our nonfiction friends. They can talk about the topics that they talk about in their book. And that's a really easy transition into a platform. And so it's harder for us fiction folks to get our mind around that. And that idea of, but it's still the same basic process. We find our audience, we define our audience, we find our audience, and then we talk to them. That said, do you guys have questions that I haven't answered? I've been trying to keep up with the questions, but I very likely could have missed some. Did I miss any? Scrolling too.
Yeah, somebody asked about a short story and it can't be unpublished. And I think this was still in the whole book funnel conversation. But I think, I mean, definitely it could be an unpublished story, right?
Oh, absolutely. You want it to be unpublished.
Yeah.
So as soon as you publish something, so like this is a Little Town. This is the novella collection that I just published in September. So this novella in here, I can no longer use this novella. I cannot publish this novella anywhere else because I have given Kregel the publication rights to it.
Right.
Okay. So I am restricted on how much I can quote from my own book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Wide Open has not sold to anybody. It was unpublished beforehand, but I did put it up on Amazon because it gives it the feel of being worth something.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So I did take that step and I made it very clear on my Amazon description that you could get it for free at my website. Don't buy it. You'll get it for free. But if you really want to buy it, you can pay me $3 for it.
That's great. I think, I don't know that we've missed any other questions, but if we did, please just ask them again. And everybody's free now to come on as well. And if you have a question, ask it in person, so to speak.
Yep.
Oh, Leslie asks, those of us who are in the early stages of building platform, what is the time schedule? And you know what, that question was asked earlier, and I'm sorry I missed it at that point. The time schedule to create for social media, it's time consuming. She has different genres. And asked about creating different platforms for each. No. I mean, I write in different genres too. One platform.
One platform, unless you're writing erotica and Christian novels, don't do that.
Yeah. Then you need 2 names. You need 2 different names.
Yeah, no. And the thing is as an editor, I will tell you, and Bethany will tell you this too, it's very, very hard to write in very distinct genres. So having a platform so even these 2 books, I had to be very careful because this is a romance collection. Mm-hmm. This is not a romance. Does it have romance in it? Yes. But my style and my platform is based on that lyrical intrigue, that lyrical suspense. So even though this is romance, I made sure that somebody who had read this book wouldn't be totally caught off guard by this book. Makes sense? So
Yeah.
like Kara Putman is a perfect example of this. So she's written World War II. She writes contemporary legal suspense. She just wrote a novella for me that's coming out next year. You would recognize Kara's style and that legal element in every single one of her books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So even though she writes historical and contemporary, there's still something of Kara in each. Make sense? So I would highly suggest not writing contemporary that is totally different feeling than historical, and try to sell them until you've established one of them.
Yeah.
Unless there's a link between them, because the market doesn't cross. Contemporary readers will sometimes read historical, but historical readers are very rarely read contemporary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a market fact.
It's true. I was just like, that is very, very true. That's such an interesting thing to think about too, is which genres readers cross between and which ones they will not. And that's been very interesting just in my short time as an agent, realizing that.
Yes. And so like, there are things that you can do if you want to kind of dabble a little bit. There are things that you can kind of push. Look at me pushing my elbows against the box. So a good example of that is in Shadows in the Mind's Eye. I play with folklore.
Mm.
Okay. So the book that I'm editing right now is based on a legend.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am playing with folklore and legend, but I'm staying within historical fiction. So I'm playing with spec fiction inside historical intrigue.
Interesting.
So if you have varied interests like me, and I read all over the stinking place, do that. Stay within a genre, but kind of push the envelope of that genre. So there's ways to not get bored inside what you've selected your lane to be.
So what would you recommend for somebody that does like writing for children, but then also writing for adults?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really a wide out there.
But I started in kids' books. So if you read which don't, because I wrote it a long time ago and it's awful. But if you read my very first book I ever published, it was actually GV fiction. And you will recognize the mystery elements there that show up in these. Okay. So I have kids when they were kids who read the GV fiction, who have grown up and read these and were like, oh, we see it.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Do you see what I mean? So you can still do it a little bit. You just need to be recognized. It still needs to be the same. And here's the interesting thing about writing for adults and kids. If you can win, what kid buys their books? Who buys books?
Yeah. Moms, parents, grandparents.
You got it. So win them over and then write a kid's book.
There you go. Pam?
I do both. I have children. I have picture books out, and I have young adult, and I've got a lot of short stories that are, ages 15 and up, but it's all speculative. So it's not quite the same, right? As say, if I went contemporary and fantasy,
right?
Everything I write is speculative in some way.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And genre bending right now is huge. Huge. I cannot emphasize that enough. Fairy tale retellings. It's a genre. Oh, yeah. Taking fantasy elements and dipping them into contemporary or historical. So like Rachel Linden's The Lemon Drop Pie. Perfect example of a genre bend. It's contemporary, but it plays with fantasy elements.
So it's kind of like magical realism is what we used to call it.
Yeah, so magical realism is technically a Latin American terminology. So I tend to avoid that terminology and call it genre bend, just for anybody who's there.
Yeah, there was an article about that, and it was a blog. It was somebody who said, we should give this a name. And they suggested curio fiction.
I love that.
Yeah, isn't that nice? Yeah,
I'm using that.
everybody on Role Makers was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. We like that. So
I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. So I'm going to start using it. I'm going to write it down so I don't forget. So I can use it.
There you
I
go.
love that. I'm glad you said that about the genre blend, because on really Twitter, I want all of you to like at least check it out, even if you're not tweeting, but start following the am querying hashtag. Is a wealth of information. I was just talking to another agent yesterday, Forever, and telling him about the culture of publishing. I feel like I'm so much more invested in the writer side of it as an agent, and even the editors, just listening, kind of active listening through there. I read through that thread every single day and have since July. So it's just been a wealth of knowledge there. But romantasy is this new term that's kind of come together, where you're blending the romance and the fantasy elements. But it's not, you can't like pitch that to them. I couldn't say, Janyre, I've got a romantasy. Like, well, is it romance or is it fantasy? But it's kind of blending those two together. Like, genre blends are super big if you can do them really, really well too.
Yep.
And I'm looking for retellings. If people have one, send it to me. My inbox is open.
Gives me some hope, because I just asked, I have so many romance friends, because that's almost all of my ACFW group down here in Dallas. And I write murder mysteries. So I'm trying to re-steer my ship, but I have promoted them for so long. I'm kind of like stuck in this little romance thing. So the genre blending gives me some hope that I can kind of re-steer back, but still keep the romance stuff.
That was actually advice that David Farland gives at a couple of his things. He's passed away, but he just said, if you introduce elements of each of the genres, you increase the market of your audience. You increase your audience, because if it's if it's like science fiction, but it's got a little romance, it's got a little bit of horror, it just brings in people from outside genres, and you have a better seller. So he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, somebody, I think Patricia asked, what advice do you give for new writers approaching agents and editors who may not want to bend the genres? If you have an editor or an agent who isn't wanting to bend genres, they are not following the market, and you don't want them as an editor or an agent.
Interesting.
And you, like Bethany said, you still have to give it a classification. So bookstores don't have romance fantasy blend. They have romance and they have fantasy. So you have to pick one as your primary. You hear me? You have to pick one as a primary, but you can still blend it. So Shadows in the Mind's Eye is historical. It is not suspense. It's not listed as thriller. But when I describe it, I say it's Hitchcockian in flair. And that gives you an immediate feel for what this book is. Right? So it's listed on the back. If you look at books on the back, there's these are called BISAC codes, BISAC. And BISAC codes tell bookstores where to shelve a book. So we have to know where to put it in a bookstore. And that's key to a pitch. If I don't know where to put it in a bookstore, I won't buy it, because it won't sell in a bookstore, because I don't know where to put it. They don't know what to do with it. Right? So I have to know where to put it, but giving me a feel for what it is. And what did you call it?
Romance. Well, I do low fantasy, so I'm kind of in that phase, but
Right.
They call it romantasy, that fantasy with that big romance.
Right. So if she said, I have a book that's contemporary romance, but it's like romancy, like fantasy romance blend, I'd be like, bring it on. Because she knows where it belongs, but she knows the blend.
Mm.
And that one you'll see probably more fantasy with that romance thread, but it's not going to start. And this is why you need to understand your genre. Of just gonna pop in real quick on this one.
No, go.
Like for a romance, you have to have the meet cute. There's certain things readers need from that romance book. A fantasy starts out completely different. And so usually in the beginning of your pages, as an agent, and I'm sure Janyre as an editor too, because you guys so many acquisitions, that's why those first few pages are so important, because I'm looking at your genre. Do those first few pages match what a reader's expectations are? So when you're doing the genre blend, it has to start out as the main genre with that element popping in, if that makes sense. A lot of times people will try to do both equal, like give equal weight, and there's no gray area, if that makes sense.
Yep, that's exactly right. And we were talking Twitter. Another good hashtag to follow is writing community, writers community.
All right, Sophia had a question too. How does YA prefix sci-fi or vice versa? Sophia, do you mean for the BISAC codes?
Yeah, or just like my story just got picked up. It's my debut novel, and the publisher's talking YA, where it's science fiction, and I know they both exist in the same world, but I went to the bookstore, just kind of saying, "Oh, where would it go?" And YA seems to have everything in it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what to, well, I guess they know what they're doing, but I'd like to know, where do I focus marketing efforts? And my website is just me. I'm a mom, I'm a grandmom, I do recipes. And they're like, okay, your website needs to be less about the recipes that you're sharing and more about you as an author. And I'm like, well, that's just messy.
But that's okay. Be messy, because you're your brand.
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay to be a little all over the place and to be honest about that. I mean, if you go on my Instagram, I think today it was all about me being a people pleaser and how hard that is on me right now, trying to juggle all the things. And hey, everybody, keep me accountable. Today I'm going to take a deep breath, and this afternoon I'm going to read a book. Won't you join me? Like, it is honest. People appreciate honesty. When you have to watch that line, don't overshare. but just be honest about where you are. Be honest about, hey, I'm walking into the bookstore trying to figure out where to put my book. And isn't it exciting to know, that I'm putting my hands on all of these books that people like you are going to come by, just be honest about those things. And yes, if you've trusted your publisher to publish your book, trust your publisher to pick the right genre. If you can't trust your publisher with things like that, then you shouldn't be publishing with them.
I'm good with them. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm supposed to be a good team player.
There's the difference between YA and YA spec is negligible. Because even so I just finished reading Ratia Sepetes's book on Romania. I can't think of the title right now because, I'm speaking to you guys and my brain just left. But she's YA, she's historical YA, but that appeals to my daughter, who reads almost strictly YA spec. But she'll read Ratia Sepetes too, because there's a flair about it that is both. Does that make sense? So when in some genres, it doesn't, like, I don't worry about whether it's historical or historical suspense or anything like that. It's just historical, because that's a classification of people. Remember at the very beginning, we were talking about psychographics rather than demographics. So that's where you are right now. You're trying to define your audience as a demographic rather than a psychographic. So back up a step and define your audience as who they are, what they're looking for, and why they'd read your book. And then talk to those people and talk to there's a marketing term called felt need. Felt need is basically the need that your audience feels. Who would have supposed? Who'd have thunk? So whatever it is inside your reader that they're feeling, this need that's kind of creeping up, and we all know that story is so powerful to speak to needs inside of people. That's the reason that Jesus told parables. Okay. So whatever that need is that's churning inside your reader's heart, know what that does, know how to speak to it, and do it both in your book and on your platform.
All right. Well, we are way past time, so we're going to wrap up. This has been so wonderful, though, and I sort of hate to stop the conversation, but, stay on a little bit. And Janyre, you're welcome to stay on as long as you are able to with us for the after party, if possible. Brandy's going to tell us about next week.
Speaking
Next
of party,
week.
we're having a party.
Yeah.
So Brandy, why didn't you tell
Party.
us about the party next week?
Yeah, we're having party. Did anybody say party? Christmas. We'll be having a Christmas party next week, and each of the Writers Chat team will come and share something special. We're doing something a little bit different this year. You'll just have to come to find out, because there will be surprises and fun. So we hope that you'll join us and come celebrate the birth of Christ in the writerly fashion at Writers Chat.
That's great. Yes, we do hope to have y'all. Janyre, thanks again. This has been wonderful. I was taking notes. I saw some people in the chat saying they were taking notes, and it's helpful to hear. We get so overwhelmed with platform and marketing, and just to be able to say, you know what, choose the one or two, choose the three things you like to talk about. Those were the things that really resonated with me, because I've been battling this for a decade now. So,
It's really, really hard.
yes, it can be. And I write in multiple genres, which does sort of, but that's where the contracts are. So that's what I do. Anyway, let's thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for your participation. And if you're watching the replay, we do invite you to join us any Tuesday morning. Also, we invite you to join our Writers Chat Facebook group. And you can find on our Writers Chat page our past episodes, and also on YouTube. So thank you for being here. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next week for the Christmas party.